fucking coffee's hot. Hi, I'm Jay. I am obviously the owner and runner of this YouTube channel that posts fucking nothing ever because I can't motivate myself to work at all. Oh fuck, that's actually really hot. But I wanted to just I set a goal for this year, 2022, to make at least 6 videos. That's a video every 2 months, and I'm not giving myself a limitation on format, whether it's scripted, not scripted, like this video is, but it's a way for me to kind of express myself and to also talk about, well, Japanese science fiction mainly, but I may also talk about fantasy, because after I made the channel, I realized I read more Naruto fantasy than, specifically isekai fantasy, than I do any other genre at the moment. So kind of expect some videos down the line of that. I do have a script I've been working on for quite a while. I'm almost finished with it. Some interesting developments happen in terms of the subject matter that I get to now add to the video. That's kind of neat. Makes it fucking longer though, so fuck me, I guess. And also I got more equipment, so I got the new lens on this camera I'm using, well, new camera really, and also using a new mic system, so see how this video turns out. Have to stop because I'm limited to 9 minutes per shot. So first off, we have 18 o'clock music bath. I do not know if the camera is showing this correctly or not, but we'll do this. It is by Juza. It's by Juza Uno, and it's a one that was written in the 1930s. Oh my god, when the fuck was this written? 1937. Fucking found it. I am not prepared for this. Anyways, the story is very. I'm not gonna talk too much about it because I'd rather everyone kind of experience it. But it involves an electric bath, which is an actual thing people would do, where you literally hook up electric rods to your bathtub while you're taking a bath and basically electrocute yourself while you're taking a bath. People were smart. And it's a very wild story where things will twist and turn and seemingly no rhyme or reason, but the actual messaging of it is very pro-imperialistic, very pro-governmental authority at the time. Is very showing of the identity and of politics, not necessarily politics, but the identity of the society in which it was written, in the time in which it was written, and the policies of the Japanese government. What's also interesting is that the writer, he was not a writer per se at the beginning. He was an engineer, and so he writes from a very interesting viewpoint, in where it's kind of tells, not really amateurish, it's just not someone who was trained as a writer to begin with. Next up, to switch gears, the next thing I recommend is Land of the Lustrous. This may be a bit more controversial, kinda. I know that there are quite a few video essays out on this on YouTube at the moment of people talking about it, but none of them mention that it is a very interesting piece of science fiction work. It's taking a lot of Buddhist philosophy and throwing it into the future and expounding it upon the characters and what they are, which is an aspect that I saw one video talk about very briefly. Especially because it's talking about Pure Land Buddhism, which is the Buddhivista Amida creates a Pure Land for a person who chants his name 10 times before they die, and he creates a Pure Land that allows them to circumvent, only be stuck in 2 different levels of incarnation, that of a god and that of a human. And in that way, they do not revert backwards to asura or animal or anything like that, and they are able to then be able to gain nirvana through that process. That is the underlying philosophy of it. It's very especially you get further into past the anime, it's very brutal in its in talking and showing what that would entail. The karma, like the karmic negative karma, not negative karma, fuck. Like the suffering goes on to the Buddhi Vista as opposed to the actual human who is getting the Pure Land. It's a very interesting piece of science fiction work. Very interesting piece. Even though people will say it's fantasy, it's not. I will argue till I'm blue in the face that it is actually science fiction. So, next up, it's going to be Usurper of the Sun. It is a first contact story. I do not like first contact stories a lot of the time. A lot of them, they either develop into just like a reflection of imperialism, which is what War of the Worlds was. It's like, or it's a reflection, or it's like a very utopic understanding of like, oh, these aliens are different, but they're like us. In that case, it's kind of more of a talk about race or societal classes and stuff like that, societal structures. Usurper of the Sun treats it a little bit more differently. The gist of the story is that main character, she finds a structure being developed on Mercury when she's in high school, and through that they find out a Dyson sphere is actually being created around the sun, and as it covers up more and more degrees of the sun, more and more awful, horrible storms start happening, famine happens, and all this other stuff, and so they have to deal with going through and trying to solve and literally stop the Dyson sphere from being created or destroy it. And not to spoil anything, but the revelation of the aliens, that when they finally do actually meet them, is very different in terms of how it represents them. It represents alien life forms, the type of life we could find. And not that they're culturally different, but the way they speak and the way they think and communicate with one another is so different from us that in order for us to before they even begin to communicate, they actually have to almost destroy their way of communication in order for them to even realize that we are even there. It's a fascinating tale that incorporates a lot of different things. It's very, very serious about what it's talking about. Very grounded also in a lot of ways, especially how it depicts literally naval combat in space, as well as how people would handle, as well as a society would handle and stuff like that, which is kind of reflected in how the pandemic has been going. Fucking great, isn't it? And also, last but not least, I'm actually going to recommend my literal favorite piece of science fiction, which is Ohara Mariko's Hybrid Child. The story revolves around the main character, sample B3, or B number 3, depending on how you want to read it, as he goes through the process of of running away from the military experimental facility that more or less created him as a synthetic humanoid that can change his structure of his bones as well as his flesh as well. And he's powered by this nuclear fusion core that's wrapped around all these different magnetic fields to keep it in place. It's freaking wild and awesome. Anyways, he's able to change into different aspects, change into different creatures, different humans, just by eating samples of their DNA and replicating his own DNA to actually look like that. It is this deeply, sometimes very violent, very disturbing story of the running away from the facility, living mainly in a girl's body, as well as talking about other societal things. And the bulk of the story takes place on what's called Aqua Planet, in fact, this is really a collection of 3 different stories that were written and compiled, a bunch of different short stories that were different compiled, that was serialized inside of a magazine. This is the book compilation of it. It is, and that's where Haramariko tends to explore what she would call maternal fascism, where a planet that is being controlled by a mother AI is brought to the grips of its needs, because it needs this AI to survive, and the AI will do things that will then get people killed, and or thousands of millions of people will die because of a simple error will happen. It is fascinating and also disturbing. It is, I highly recommend it. Just highly recommend it. And that's kind of all I have right now. This is a very quick video, but zero planning in it. Yeah, and then please stick around for the one video I'm gonna be hopefully making about both foodie that's taking me for fucking ever. Should be out in April, probably April 30th. That's one of the dates. Woohoo!